Absolutely. You're the most important medicine for him. Because you will relieve him from all of his depression. And the depression and the stress of that is his causing
go
all
up
of his
and
illness.
stay with him for a while to see what he's like.
I'm telling you, we're going to go to my nephew's place in Glens Falls, which is not far from him, on the mountain. I'm going to go and take him to be with us on his mountain. So Habibi and me, and we'll really bring him out of himself, you know. I couldn't do it this time.
But he was on that telephone, I told you that night, and he sounded, for the first time,
a lot better.
A lot better. He was lively and was suggesting things and everything else. So I don't know. Maybe he's getting out of it.
Part of it. When I talk to him, he says to me, "Stan, the walls are closing in on me."
But it seems like he got, at least he was talking normally, lively. Well, anyway, the point is
he's also not telling you a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. He's not telling you. He doesn't want you to know. Understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nat,
yeah.
Tell me about this. Did you really work 12 hours a day? Tell me about your life in Palermo, where you taught, and how did you...
I started teaching here in Trapani privately, and so I really got to know a lot about how to teach English. And I use a method that I had learned up at the Università Straniera by a professor who was really excellent at it, and I use some of his methods and my own methods learned at New York University, John Dewey's pragmatic method. Anyway, the point is this, that I taught here in a school by the Catholic Church for a number of years, and it was a friend of mine who was the headmaster, you might say, of the teachers here in Trapani, in the province of Trapani. His name, well, I can't even think of his name right now, but very important to me. And he wanted me to teach in this school. Then he wanted me to teach private. He wanted me to teach in the public schools, but because all my degrees are in private schools, like New York University is a private school, Long Island University is a private school, and another school I studied at in Massachusetts is a private school, that surprisingly anybody who teaches or who's got a degree in a private school in America is not recognized, or was not recognized at that time, as having a degree. Somebody who might come from a university, unimportant university, let's say in Alexandria in Egypt, would be recognized because it's a state school. The universities in New York State at that time legally were not recognized schools. Anyway, I had the GI Bill of Rights because I was a pilot during the war, so I had a chance to build up my background, educational background. So I've got a number of degrees, university degrees, and I went to New York to this university in Italy, Università Straniera. When I stopped teaching here in Trapani, fortunately I helped the American consul, consulate, to help the head teacher here in Trapani learn English. I gave him private lessons for a time, and so he was able to go to Fort Wayne, Indiana, study at Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then he was able to become a good friend of the President of the United States at that time. He was invited to the White House because he was the one of the most important speakers who had learned English well, and from me especially. And so the American consul of the consulate in Palermo was very happy about that. And so when I asked him to back me on a teacher's job in Palermo, they were willing to do that. So I got a job with the British College in Palermo. They helped me get this job. And so I taught in Palermo for 19 years, continuously. And that meant that I was mostly in Palermo. I had a flat in Palermo, and via Duke of Vegetables, I had a nice flat there, and so I was 6 days out of the week in Palermo, and only one day, because in Italy at that time, if you taught, you had to teach 6 days in the public schools, or even in the private schools, and so that was a big problem because I was in Trapani, living in Trapani only, you might say, 1 day out of every week. Okay?
Tony,
Bene, allora. So you were working, were you really working 12 hours a day? You were saying that...
I might have worked, I think, from 9 until 12. Then I'd go back and have lunch at the house or in some restaurant, and then I'd take a nap and start teaching in the afternoon until 9 at night.
Really, at 9 at night? Really?
9 at night, certainly. This was the difficult part of this thing, that I taught the adults at night and the children in the morning or in the afternoon.
Well, you've done it.
The teaching was to first children maybe 5, 6, 7 years of age, and being I had a degree in childhood education, I was the kind of a teacher they needed, because I had a direct approach to the John Dewey method of teaching, and this was adaptable for young people. But I applied the same method of teaching to the adults, and I discovered that it was the correct way to teach, even for adults. Treat them so that English, they could learn English happily. It was enjoyable. It was so easy. In three weeks I got them to converse in English. Of course it was only this kind of American English that I taught. But I can say one thing, that let's say in September when the school year began, I had maybe 10 students in my class, and by the time the end of the year came around, I had 30 or 40 students in my class, and the English professors who were from Great Britain, from Cambridge University, they ended up with 3 when they had begun with 20 or 30 students. There was quite a difference there. Anyway, I taught, you might say, English in a way that they could enjoy it. I enjoyed teaching. This was the important thing. I loved to teach, and so enjoying being in a room, teaching, doing it my way and having the students join in with me in the lesson, whether they were adults, whether they were old people or young people or just children, was enjoyable, very, very enjoyable for me. In fact, maybe because I like to be an actor, teaching as if I were an actor. This is, and they put up with me. How many of so important people came to my class to learn English, and they enjoyed talking to me.
What I'm wondering is, I mean, that's a very, very heavy teaching load. And I'm wondering, you've done a tremendous amount of writing. You've done. You
gotta speak loudly because I'm hard of hearing. When I was a pilot, remember?
Right. Okay.
During the Second World War, the air pressure in my plane going up and down over the mountains of the Himalaya, carrying gasoline to the Chinese troops, wasn't easy. Flying into the sun when I was going west, and into the sun when it was going into the sun when I was going east, and into the sun when I was going west from Missionor to Kunming. Boy, oh boy, and such a high altitude in a C-47 with loads of barrels of gasoline in the airplane, boy, that wasn't easy. And so I can hardly see at a distance, and I can't hear. So you'll have to speak loudly. When you ask me a question, say it as if I were in the next room.
Same token, you've done a tremendous amount of writing. You've done a lot of translating, plus you're, you know, one of the founders, if not the founder, of the Antigrupo. You would go around doing readings, you've been to the States. When did you do all the writing? How did you manage your day?
Well, let's say for 25 years, I had the cultural page of the weekly Tropny Nova. They published something like 3,000 copies every week. Well, the point is this, that when I finished teaching in Palermo and I'd come back for the for Saturday night and Sunday morning and afternoon and evening, well, I'd do a lot of work during the weekend. And because I was like Ulysses in the Odyssey, who really was a sailor from Trapani, I think, and he dictated to his wife or to his daughter, to a very beautiful young lady like, not Penelope, but Nausicaa. The production, his production in general, was, let's say, produced dictating it to his wife, or to his daughter, or to his girlfriend. Let's say that a good part of the prose work I did was dictating to my wife. I'd beat her up in the morning and then say she'd have to take dictation and work like a slave for the rest of the week, correcting my mistakes in my dictation. Then I'd come back and check it, and I'd recorrect the thing, and I'd say, okay, this can be published, this can be published. And so we were two putting together the same thing, like the blind author of the Odyssey, who probably had his wife manipulate the text for him, like my wife, but I wouldn't permit her really to manipulate my text. If you look at anything I write, there's no hand of the woman in it. Instead, the author of the Odyssey was more gentle with his wife or with his daughter or with Nausicaa, and allowed her to change things around. Obviously, you can see that in the Odyssey if you read it with attention. Anyway, I would write my poems either in Italian but mostly in English when I was between lessons at the school. But you might say most of the prose writing I did on the weekend, together with my wife. So my wife had nothing to do with the poetry, but she does have a lot to do with my prose. And so it was a combination, you might say. Poetry in Palermo, between lessons, and prose on Saturday night and Sunday. When finally we had a real American weekend, that the schools in Sicily ended up on Friday night, then I had 2 days in Trapani and was able to do more work with Nina.
So did you dictate to her in English?
No.
In Italian?
It was in Italian. I never dictated to if you talk to Nina, you'll suddenly discover something that's horrible. She can't speak English. She can't even think in English. I tried to teach her. I tried to pound English. She refused. And she said, I'll leave you if you try to teach me English. I don't understand this thing. So she forced me for the last 60 years of marriage to speak only in Sicilian and Italian in this house. So that at a certain point I didn't know whether I was coming in Italian or coming in English or in Sicilian. Do you understand that?
Okay.
So I don't know really who I am. Am I a Sicilian? Or when I lean on this leg, I'm an American? What am I, an American or an English or a Sicilian? Maybe you can tell me.
Well, that's what I'm here to find out.
Anyway, I tried to find out myself, honestly, writing a book called Chicano Americano. I noticed that you had brought this book all the way over from the States, and it's written in Italian, right?
Right, right.
And I tried to discover all this in that book, Revisiting America in 1977. What did I do? I took a Greyhound bus, only for $50 going to the West Coast, and then coming back to the East Coast for another $50, $100 to travel all through the United States, right?
Right.
And I really saw America. I saw America, the guts of America. I didn't take a plane. My brother wanted to pay for the plane trip. And he wanted me to take a plane. I had flown through the skies from New York straight over to Los Angeles. What would I have seen? I'd seen nothing. That would have been impossible to learn what America really meant to me. If I am an American or a Sicilian, or if I'm a mixture of both. I think I'm both. I hope I'm both. I hope maybe someday they'll consider me both. That some people won't consider me American, and that other people won't consider me just Sicilian, but derived from both cultures, from the island of Sicily. Of course, this great difficulty happened. I'll have to explain this. Will you let me explain it to you?
Sure.
When I worked as a law student in a law firm, a very important law firm, 10 of the most important lawyers in the United States on Wall Street. At the end of a year, I was undecided what to do. Would I become a lawyer or would I become a teacher? And because I preferred teaching, though I would have enjoyed legal practice, I decided to go back to Sicily and write there and live in Sicily with my wife, with my Sicilian wife. So I told them, I'm sorry I'm leaving. Why? Your father was a lawyer. Your brother's a lawyer. Why are you leaving? Well, I'm going back to live in Sicily. What? They all said to me, a big fat lawyer with millions of dollars. What? He said, you're going to choose to live in Sicily and you're not going to continue living in the United States in New York City? I said, what's wrong with that? He says, you gotta stay here. You're a lawyer. You're going to be a lawyer. I said, I'm sorry. I can't stand New York City anymore. You realize where I'm living now, the rats come out of the walls. There was a rat carted off the carcass of a turkey that we had on the windowsill, and the rat was this big. It's twice as big as the rats that are in Sicily. How do you laugh now? Did you understand what I said?
Well...
It was in Brooklyn. Well, anyway.
Okay.
Ask another question.
All right. Well, so you met your wife, were married, and she was living with you in the States? How did this all come about?
I didn't meet my wife with Mary.
No.
I had come to Sicily.
Okay.
I had come to Sicily because at that time, don't tell Nina I'm saying this, I was engaged to a Deli Kraska, a Lithuanian girl, American Lithuanian girl, who danced with the original Ballet Russe and who danced at the Metropolitan Opera House and also danced at the Rockefeller Radio
City
Center,
Music Hall?
In New York City. And she was wonderful, beautiful girl. And she was engaged to me. But when I came here, I fell in love with Nina and dropped poor Dell over there in America and got married to my wife. I had come over here to Sicily to see what Sicily was like and who my people originally were in Sicily. But in 3 months, I was waylaid by my wife, who said, when I got off the train and she met me, she said to a girl standing alongside, "You see that man? He's going to be my husband." And we were married. In fact, she put out she managed we lived in a museum. Her father was the director of a museum of Trapani, a Museo Pepoli, and she had her father put a long red carpet down through the museum, down the steps of the museum, and to the Madonna of Trapani, which is the most important church, I think, in Trapani. It's only about 5 or 6 miles down the road here. And I got married to my wife. My wife had carted me off. And so I started becoming really a Sicilian again. And so it had nothing to do with Mary.
Okay, but I guess what I'm asking is, you were working in the law firm. Were you married at that time? You must have been.
Yeah, because then I had to decide where we were going to live. Were we both going to live in Sicily, or were we going to live in America? So we went back to America to live in 1950.
So Nina went with you?
Yes, and Nina came with me. Obviously, she was my wife, no?
Right.
But when Nina got into an argument with my mother and left the house by the way of the window instead of the front door, I decided that we had to go back to Sicily to live for a while and get over this thing. And do you know what happened?
No.
One of the most beautiful ships that was the Saturna, which was a ship that took us back. Nina, at that time, already was pregnant.
Okay.
And so, as we went back across the Atlantic Ocean, 3 days out of New York City, something happened to the boat, and we were in third-class accommodations near the big kitchens and the stink of the kitchens and this engine that shot a bolt or something. It scared her, and she had to go up to the hospital to see what happened to her because she was pregnant, And the next day, Arlene was born on the ship.
Oh.
Do you understand that? And she had a lot of people around her. They wanted to become they wanted the child to be baptized on the ship. In fact, the baby was baptized on the ship. And the baby is, you might say, Arlene is both American, Portuguese, and she's from Trieste because the Saturnia was a ship from Zone B or Zone A, I don't remember.
Okay.
Let's say I absolutely decided to live in Sicily when I started building this house. I really wanted a house like a good American wants his house with his garden, with his trees, and I planted all the pine trees around my house here. And I wanted a beautiful car in front of the door. You know what my car is like, a beautiful limousine. What? Do you like my car?
Oh yeah, your Cinquecento there?
Well, it's original, no? If anything.
Yeah.
But it can't carry all the bags and luggage that you and Barkan had coming here.
No, we couldn't.
So we had to use your friend's car and his muscles to carry all the luggage that Barkan has.
So, one of the things I'm wondering is, did you ever have a consciousness of not feeling American, of rejecting some of the values of America, or not feeling quite a part of it? Or was this something that sort of just came slowly because you came here? I mean, there was obviously something that drew you here.
Actually, I suppose I've been always Sicilian and American. American in the absolute sense, because I grew up as an American. When my mother and father would speak at the dinner table in hushes and speak in Sicilian behind the palm of their hands, they wouldn't let me hear, or my brother, what they were saying in Sicilian. So we never, or at least I wasn't ever able to learn Sicilian. They continued speaking in Sicilian, but they were well versed in English. I mean, they had gone to all the schools in English. My father was a lawyer in New York State, and my mother had gone through the elementary and high schools in America. They were both born in the States. So in a certain sense, I had become an authentic American with only a slight background of Sicilian. I knew what spaghetti and sauce was like. I liked my Sicilian food, but I had no notion of what attitudes, Sicilian attitudes were like. I picked them up little by little when I came back to Sicily. In fact, I'm still against many of the antiquated methods of family life. And in the beginning, I was completely against family, though I finally learned at the end that the family is the most important thing. Sicily taught me that in the end, that family is necessary. In fact, I sit at the head of the table when my grandchildren come and we sit at the table. I'm at the head of the table, and I try to say a prayer thanking God for the food we have, being that head of the family.
So, why did you leave? Was it just to cool off from this argument?
Why did I finally break off from the United States, and this was decided?
Right.
It was easier living in America than New York. You realize I had to break my balls to live in America, in New York City? Oh, goodness. To go back there, I'd have had to work. I don't like to work. The Americans want people to work. It's the last thing I want to do. I wanted to be able to do things the easy way. And teaching, the way I teach, was easy. You see, if I went to an American school, I'd had to do my teaching the way the principal, or the way the system there, forced me to teach. I mean, the originality, that's my way of thinking, my way of doing things, which is against the system, that I could only do in a place where, like Palermo, in a school where I had complete freedom. Once an inspector came to my school, and he walked in without knocking. I said, "Get the hell out of here! Who gave you permission to come in here?" "Well, I'm the inspector." "Well, that's why you should have knocked on the door before coming in. Go out and knock." Would the principal allow this sort of thing in the United States? I doubt it.
Tell me about the anti-gruppo. Tell me how that formed. How did you get? What was that all about? I mean,
the anti-gruppo. While I was in Palermo, I met a lot of interesting writers, and we began reciting together in public squares and places. While I was on a boat going to Scammacca, an island north of Sicily, because I had already become the cultural editor of the third page of the weekly, Property Novel, I proposed to a chap by the name of Pietro Terminelli. I said, "Why don't we form a movement? You, me, and Crescenzio Cani, and whoever wants to join us, we recite together, and we propose certain things like using language that people can understand, talking to the people in public square, using a form of literature which is comprehensible, that people can understand, and that starts from an ideology which is to the left and not to the right, like
fascism. Like fascism?
Fascism. I did. They didn't like it. They understand. Let's write poetry which can communicate. And little by little, we were joined by other very, very important poets. I think Johnny Dewey, great poet from the city capital, joined FRAGOLA, one of the best translators. He translated all of Dr. Lee's poetry, joined, and he lives in Tripoli even today. And then finally, we reached all the way over to the other side of the island to St. Lee in Lingua Gloucester. And he really, I consider him to be the greatest poet writing in Sicilian. And his ideas were let go, gave belief in God, and at that time I didn't. I came around later on, at least in the last 2 years, I've begun believing in God very much so, and in Jesus. I really believe in Jesus Christ, I really believe in God. I have rationally convinced I'm blind. But I really believe in God rationally. Well now, the anti-group was against the establishment forward, against the big publications, against the big editors who had their particular authors and they made them famous, more famous than anybody else. Actually, I was convinced that today there are thousands and thousands and thousands of good writers and good poets all over the world, and most of them are in America. Right? You have thousands of fine poets in America when maybe 100 or 200 years ago you only had 3 or 4 halfway decent poets. Today you've got everybody writing, and this ought to be recognized. They shouldn't ignore it. The anti-group will want to make it clear that we all are in to write good literature. The points, the 21 points of the anti-group, which explain some of our theories, but they don't formalize what the other writers and poets of the anti-group have to accept. Each one has his own notion, but we're all willing to get on the podium together and recite, even if our poetry is different one from the other. This is important. We're different, each one of us, and we want to be ourselves. We don't want to have a leader or a group leader telling us how we should write. So this is written up in our 21 points that none of us is the leader, none of us is a follower, that we all are equal, different from one another.
And I don't find anything, that's the way I don't find anything growing.
We ate them.
I'm talking about there's nothing growing there anymore. Where are the trees? Nothing.
In the garden. You went down to the garden?
Yes, all the way down.
There are lemons, aren't there?
Do I have to go beyond where it's locked?
No. No. Have you been to the garden, into the garden?
Yes, all the way down.
Did you open the gate? There's a gate shutting it, right? Going down the steps.
Yes, that's your part of the garden. It's yours too below that?
Yeah, that's mine.
Oh, that's so. Why is it locked?
You keep the dog down. Because the dogs go down into the garden and then hop over the fence one way or another and they disturb our neighbor.
Ah,
so we shut that
garden.
gate. We keep that gate shut so the dogs don't go down into the garden.
So, okay, next time, my next try, I'll go over.
Well, if you want to go down into the garden, you open that gate and walk in.
I didn't know I could open the gate. I thought it was locked.
No. All you have to do is turn the handle and pull.
All right, next time, next try.
Okay.
Coming back.
Because, in other words, you got to that gate door, which was shut,
right.
and you didn't go down into the garden.
No, the dog had his stick. He wanted, to pull that.
He's very anxious. Did he follow you?
All the way.
Because he wanted to get down into the garden.
Oh, is that?
He figured you were going there, so he would be able to visit.
But he had a stick in his mouth, and every time I tried to take it from him, he wouldn't let me.
That's his way of playing.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to throw it for him,
No.
but he wouldn't let me take it. What the problem? It was for the girls. you know, for the people, anybody who wanted them.
Hey, Nat. Hey,
Yeah.
Stanley,
Yeah.
come back here. Come back here.
Yeah.
Take your glasses out. That's those
Okay.
shades there.
Yeah.
Tell the world here who this guy is.
That's Scammacca. That Scammacca is the twin brother of Dick Severio A. Scammacca, the two of whom together flew the India-Burma-China hump during the Second World War. After the war, Dick returned to America to eventually become a lawyer and fairly well off. Nat went back to Italy, Sicily, seeking the center point of his origins, a la Alex Haley, if you will. And there he met his distant cousin, Nina Di Giorgia, and he married her, and came into contact with people which have come to be called the anti-gruppo. People like Cesare Sabatini of Umberto D, bicycle thieves, two women fame. People like Danilo Dolci, former spokesman against the mafia. People like Santo Calì, whom they consider to be the greatest poet of this century. People like others, like Gianni Decedui of Castelvetrano, Ignazio Navarra of Sciacca, Pietro Terminelli di Smotumanello, Nicola d'Alessandro of Ignazio Apolloni of Palermo, and many, many others. And together, they became like one voice with 1,000 voices, all proclaiming the right of everyone to ring his own bells, so to speak. A group against groups, against those who would seek to diminish the creative power of the Sicilian people, which is considerable. Against even the church, which would seek to make them less than important, less than individuals. Against the mafia here in its own country. And the mafia really never disturbed them unless they would see something they shouldn't have. Once Carmelo Pereira got shot, I think because he saw something he shouldn't see. But that's another thing about Sicily. So poets are respected in Sicily, so much so that even the mafia won't touch them.
Yes, I've never been touched.
Okay,
So,
now
Nat became their spokesman because he's Sicilo-American. He knows Italian and he knows English. So he became the nexus to spread the good word. I came into contact with him through his brother, who one day came to my door in Merrick, and using my 1818 green patented Mexican door knocked, and I opened the door and I saw this tall, square-faced, very handsome man, broad-shouldered, saying to me, "Are you a publisher?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Could you publish a poem called Joseph Shearing, the greatest poem by Sicily's greatest poet, Sandra Calì?" I said, "Well, let me see what it is." So he gave me this. Anti-Gruppo 73 here, as you see, it's bigger than the Encyclopedia Britannica. A tome. It was, I said, "Let me see what this is." And I was looking through it. I saw it was in Italian. I saw it was in a language that looked like Italian, Sicilian. I saw that there was Greek in here and Latin. And another language which I couldn't make out for some years, it turned out to be Tahitian. And the next day, Dick Scammacca brought me, that was volume 1. He brought me volume 2, a second tome. And the third day brought me Anti-Gruppo 75. And every day, for weeks, he brought me another book, until there were poems from that wall to this wall, books I mean. And I said, this isn't a poem or poet, it's a movement that should be known in America. And thus was born the relationship between cross-cultural communications and the Sicilian Anti-Gruppo. I brought out this collection. Initially, I had just worked on a broadside of my own writing that my wife had done a drawing. And I said to Dick, "I have an idea, why don't I make a broadside of your brother Nat's, a poem of his?" He said, "Okay, let's do it." And so this was that broadside, An American Entropy, which is, I think, the central poem of Nat, which really states who he is. Would you like to have him read it?
American Entropy. In far-off Sicily I sing like an American. Though lost in the whirl of events, I still see wet pavements glistening under the corner lamplights, the endless corners of New York City, and I hear the syncopated jazz of Gershwin throbbing in my ears, or Bartleby, the upbeat the step ahead to sweet tunes. I left it all because of crazed composers beating their political tom-toms to the tune of war. Beats that crashed into me, that grogged me, that punch-drunk me, and made me flee like a whipped dog, dragging my secret dreams along because no ears could hear other than the great hurrahs for war. But oh, the pulse of streetcars and afternoon rushes of the big town, that still lives in me like a gigantic echo, splitting into all the Brooklyn slangs and multicolored accents of the biggest crowd I know. This all reminds me, I am an American.
Oh, tell me the story about the Bronze Star.
All right. I used to fly out of Doizari, just on the other side of the Himalaya Mountains, between Burma and India, or Bangladesh, if you want to put it that way. And I had been flying as a pilot in a C-47 for a number of months already, and I hadn't been transferred as yet up to my brother's command. And I was flying, ready to go back to Bangladesh after I'd been flying in and out of some of the airports in Burma under the control of the Americans and the British, and even the Canadians. When I got a command, the plane number so-and-so and so-and-so, I have to go to McTeela and take command of the airport. Now, I had known that the airport of McTeela was a dangerous place because many times the Japs would come down out of the hills, take over one of the runways, and you would have the Japanese in control of one runway, and the other runway was in control of the British themselves. So I was a little leery about this. I was somewhat worried, but here I was, only something like 21 years of age, or 20 or 21 years of age, and I was a commander in an airport. You understand what that meant to me, huh? I said, I started to give orders to my crew. I never gave them orders. They gave orders to me. Anyway, to Amagad, I said, Amagad, listen to that radio, and so on and so forth. And so finally we flew toward McTeela. It was in the middle of Burma, just a little below Mandalay. And I flew into the airport. Who came to meet me? The only officer on the airport, a doctor. And he gave me the conditions of the airport and what it was like. He says, you've got no house to live in here because it's only a tent, and if you're going to run the show here for the next few days, well, you take over the tent. So there was only a tower control, and I went to stay in the tent that night, to sleep in the tent, and looked up at the stars and said, why the devil are men fighting? What are they fighting about in this beautiful country, in this beautiful world? And I fell asleep. I don't know how long, many hours later, I woke up because there was a scream, an atrocious scream, and obviously somebody had his throat slit, no? And I said, for the first time in the middle of a war, because I'm always in a C-47 flying through the sky. And so I've got to stop because she's talking, you idiot.
So you tell me, so you arrived at the...
Tell them that the telephone interrupted this story.
Well, all right. So the telephone rang because we have an appointment and the fellow's going to be late. So back it up and tell me, so when you arrived, there was a doctor...
at the airport at McTeela.
Right, and then you had fallen asleep.
And I was in a tent, and I'd fallen asleep after I had looked up at the stars and thinking, what a beautiful world this is. Why do peoples fight one another? Anyway, I woke up and there was an atrocious scream through the night, like a knife cutting through the darkness. And Why, cracky, somebody had died. I had never been in the war, actually. I'd always flown over it. In a C-47, I was comfortably seated in a poltrona, as they say in Italian, in a beautiful seat in my C-47, and I gave orders, even to Amagard. I gave orders to my crew. Amagard was my complete crew. There wasn't even a mechanic on board ship, only me and Amagard, understand? He'd have to kick the stuff that we dropped. We had drop missions, and he would kick the stuff out of the airplane so that the Americans or the Canadians or the British would get them. Anyway, I was on this field, and I had heard this tremendous scream slice through the air, and I knew somebody had died. Then I heard another scream. By this time, I was shitting in my pants because I really was in the middle of a war. I said, here I am, what am I doing here? And so I jumped out of my tent because I knew if I stayed in the tent, they'd be looking for me with a knife, the Japs. So I hid myself in the dark and tried to scratch the ground and dig myself a hole in which to hide. When another scream, three persons had been killed. Who was being killed, I was asking myself. Finally, out of the darkness, who do I see coming along? This Gurkha, with a knife that long, curved, and it was all smeared with blood. And the Gurkha said to me, you, Commander, me killed 3 Japs. None face in Japs, in the British. 8 British soldiers leave perimeter, defensive perimeter, leave me, only me. And he holds up his knife. I said, oh, thank God for you. And I gave him a kiss right there on both sides of the cheek. Well, the point is this. We defended that airport, even if I had to be very careful, You know why I had to be careful, huh? You know. Barkan knows why I had to be very careful. I couldn't sit down. A number of weeks later, I received the Bronze Star for having courageously defended the airport at Batira. And I said to myself, of course, wasn't I the commander of the airport? After all, who was the Gurkha? He was only an Indian. Let's put it that way. The British soldiers had disappeared.
Yeah. That part I didn't know. That part of the story.
Huh?
That the British soldiers had deserted the perimeter. I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah. There was 8 soldiers.
And I thought that you were digging the hole in the tent, not outside the tent. And that when he came and he said, yeah, and you saw it was he, and you shook one leg and then the other. And we knew his craft stories.
What would you do if you heard these screams in the night? You'd never been in a war, in the battle ground before.
Same as you, but I mean, I would have finished the hole and been in it.
3 screams. You realize I heard 3 men die?
Yeah.
Whether they were Japs or an American, how did I know what they did?
But you said the screams are getting closer and closer. First it was a distant scream, then it was closer, and then it was right outside the tent. That's the you told them before. And then this guy came in with his bloody sword and you shook your foot. Listen, if you want to know what a brave man I am, I was in Pamplona.
Yeah.
And they had the running of the bulls. I didn't do that. But I went into the arena with a Basque guy named Jesus Guembe, Bibi and I were staying with. And there were maybe 500 people in there. And he says, oh, toro, negro, peligroso. He says, oh, bull, black, very dangerous. Well, Bibi was trying to photograph me. But
Well, I thought now the Gurkhas are Indians, but they're from the
Yeah, they're
Himalaya.
from the Himalaya mountains.
the mountain.
And they're well known in India. They're respected to the utmost, of course.
And
And
usually-
after that, I respected the Gurkhas more than anything else. I mean, this man saved my life. I mean, they were out there to kill me. I was the commander at that point. You understand? You realize that the story had passed around all the latrines. It was whispered everywhere. Don't go to McTeela because sometimes the Japs own one side of the field and at times the British are practically closed down. And yet it was such an important airport, the British couldn't give it up because it was the only airport they could fly in things behind the lines.
Yeah.
Because it was in a sort of a pocket, and the airport was in this pocket below Mandalay, and was absolutely necessary to the Allied forces.
Mm-hmm. For the Burma Road defense. No?
I can't understand why they didn't keep a bigger contingent of defense there instead of just 8 British soldiers. This is what I couldn't understand. But I suppose they were occupied, extremely occupied in the front lines.
Yeah.
Because they were fighting. I had only one other run-in with the Japanese.
Oh, yeah.
Once I was flying over Burma, and I see a plane coming toward us, and I didn't know exactly whether it was an American plane or whether it was what plane it was. But when I noticed it wasn't American, I dipped the nose of my ship above the tree tops. And so did he. So he could have shot me down. But when this Japanese plane, and it was Japanese, went by about 100 yards from me, he waved at me as he went by. I'll never understand what that meant. I mean, a Japanese in a plane waved at me.
That is something.
And he could have very easily shot my plane down. What
Was
the
it
hell?
zero?
Huh?
It was a zero?
Yeah. He could have shot me down. Instead, he decided he just waved at me. I don't know
He
what.
spared your life.
I don't know why he spared my life. Maybe he didn't have ammunition. He had used up his ammunition, or what?
Could be. But why would he follow
Or
you
maybe
down?
his machine gun didn't work.
But
Or what?
why would he have followed you down?
He didn't follow. I don't know why. When I went down to the level of the trees, he did too.
That's what I'm saying. Why would he do that if he
I
weren't,
don't know.
if he weren't stalking you?
I'll never explain. It's things. Life is.
Okay.
Penelope by Alexis Romay, a Cuban poet from Havana. Translated by Franco De Marco into Italian.
Va bene.
Penelope, calata la notte vado tessendo un'illusione e immagino donne d'insonnia e di gelo. Le amo, le respingo, le tengo nascoste. Supplica di rosa, congiunzione del fuoco. Calata la notte vado tessendo un'illusione e gioco a nascondermi alla malaventura, al verso fiacco, al verso precipitoso, al lume incerto, raffica d'inverno. Fugge la notte e la sua tela di stelle diffonde in azzurri e trilli di pettirosso. Così ancora mi abbaglia la mattina mentre gioco all'alchimia e disfo sogni. Depongo la mia corazza al sorgere dell'alba quando l'eroe dilegua e mi lascia in silenzio. Allora, paziente, vagheggio che mi colga la notte e ancora tesserò.
Give an introduction to it. You gotta keep quiet, Barkan. Nina non parlare.
Okay, give us a little introduction to this.
Huh?
Wait a minute, Stanley, you
I've
have
got to
to...
give a little introduction to it.
Stanley, you got to sit down.
Huh?
Stanley has to sit down.
Sit down or go outside. Il telefono.
L'ho fatto, l'ho già fatto. Va bene.
In English. This poem, Topi, 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 or Rats, 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 is my explanation, you might say, or my reason for really deciding to live in Sicily, where I have a place which is natural on the side of a holy mountain like Erice, where I don't have people living on top of me or me living on top of them like we were in a rat's cage, or one person living on top of another person like New York City. Do you understand that? Here I've got plenty of room. The people live closely allied to Mother Nature. It's only a step away from the door. And this is the way I like it. In New York City, by cracky, you have almost 10 million people who don't even know what a tree looks like. All right, now I'll read my poem. First I'm going to read it in Italian because the Italian moves me more here than the English. Then I'll read the English. Is that all right by you?
That's fine.
Okay. Topi, topi, topi. Nevrosi. Verme che mangi l'individuo fino al torsolo. Nevrosi. Gomiti accanto a gomiti. Piedi accanto a piedi. Città affollate. Anidride carbonica. Asfalto. L'altro giorno sabbia e mare. Qualche orma solitaria soltanto l'altro giorno. Gabione, moltiplicazione di palazzi. Ci costa meno costruire casa su casa, casa accanto a casa, muro su muro, costa meno. Respirare la stessa aria, usufruire dello stesso spazio. Topi, 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 società, pensieri tutti uguali. Radio, televisione, cinema, rotocalchi, pensieri sempre uguali. Io non sono malato, tu sei il malato. No, lo sei tu. Chi è il malato? Tu, no, tu. Noi, lo spazio è malato. Tengo questi topi in gabbia da tanto tempo, si sono moltiplicati. Prima erano felici e grassi e ora sono in molti e sono pazzi. Mi dispiace, non ho tempo. Dove il tempo? Tra lavorare in fabbrica e andare e venire, non ho tempo di pensare. Sono stanco. Arrivo a casa e mi butto sul letto a guardare la televisione. Ambizione? Mi dispiace, non ho tempo, non voglio che mi levano la casa. Allora voto a destra, a destra. Vendo il mio voto. Non leggo i giornali, costano troppo, accetto. Accetto quello che dice il prete. Accetto. Accetto. Accetto tutto. Ecco il problema. Accettare o non accettare. Credere o non credere. Spazio o non spazio. Topi, 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 movimento. Topi. In English? Okay?
Okay.
Shall I read it in English now?
Yes, but why do you prefer the Italian?
I didn't understand that.
Why do you prefer the Italian?
Because it sounds better to me.
Okay.
I feel it more so. Well, let's see what it sounds like in English.
Okay.
Rats, rats, rats. Nevrosi. Worms that eat the individual right down to the bone. Nevrosi. Elbows that touch elbows, feet crowding feet, sardine-stacked cities, the breathing of many, carbon dioxide, asphalt. The other day, sandy beaches and the sea. A lonely footprint or two, only the other day. Cages, the multiplication of buildings, it costs less to crowd houses on top of houses, houses crammed in alongside of houses, wall upon wall. It costs less to breathe the same stale air and to use the same space. Rats, rats, rats. Society, thoughts that are all the same. Radio, television, cinema, newspapers, thoughts that are always the same. I am not sick. You are sick. No, not he, but you. Who is sick? You. No, you. We. Space is sick. I keep these rats in cages, and they have multiplied. First they were happy and fat. Now they are many and mad. I'm sorry, I have no time. Where is time? Between working in a factory and going and coming, I have no time to think. I am tired. I get home and fling myself into bed to look at television. Ambition? I am sorry, I have no time. I do not want them to take my house away. So I wrote to vote to the right, to the right. I sell my vote. I never read the newspapers. They cost too much. I accept whatever the priest tells me. I accept. I accept. I accept everything. Here is the problem. To accept or not to accept. To believe or not to believe. Space or no space. Rats, rats, rats movement.